Whatever you're going through, you will get through it because you're here. And that means you are not alone. This is The Meaningful Meeting. Now your host, Ace Cannon.
I got to be honest with you, I'm not sure that I thought we'd ever be back here for another edition of The Meaningful Meeting. A little backstory. This kind of was spawned by the old Ace at Large podcast, which has now become a really fun video thing because Ace at Large didn't seem to fit the name anymore. And then I went months and months and months not knowing what to do with this idea, these thoughts, and settled upon the name The Meaningful Meeting. The idea being that throughout the course of every week, you're going to go through and have so many meetings at work. And we talk about the fact that so many of them are wasted time. I just saw someone the other day, a very famous wealthy businessman, who said that he doesn't have meetings. He doesn't allow anybody to sit down because how many meetings are set for an hour and you could do the entire thing in about 7 minutes and nobody gets tired enough in 7 minutes to sit down. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of the concept behind it. This is the one meeting every week you would have that's meaningful, that means something, that could be important to you. Thus, we return with The Meaningful Meeting. Now, as I've always said, I have no illusions of being any type of an expert. I am not someone who has any type of background, any type of PhD, any type of education when it comes to the things that we talk about. Formal education. What I do have is life experience and ideas and things that are important to me to share. Because if there's one person that can be helped by this, it helps me. So sometimes just getting this stuff out of your head is good. And if I can just get it out of my head and other people can take it and use it and appreciate it, or it can start them thinking, or then give them an idea they share with someone else or back with me, then we're all helping each other. So we're here because in many ways, because of some very nice people. A guy named Jim hit me up on Facebook and he said, "Hey, Ace, longtime listener. I just came across your podcast, Meaningful Meeting, and I really enjoyed listening to you and hearing your messages in them. Pretty bummed out when I figured out the last one you did was in November. Have you stopped doing that podcast? Does it become something different? I want you to know your voice is heard and you do make a difference." That meant a lot to me. There were several of those when it comes to The Meaningful Meeting. And this note from a former member of the Ace and TJ's Grin Kids family, a former Grin Kid. I guess once a Grin Kid, always a Grin Kid. Her name is Michelle. She was on our very first Grin Kids trip in 2000. And we got to see her again a few weeks ago for the first time in a long time at the Ace and TJ Share Funny live show. And she left me this note. And I won't read the entire thing because, well, you'll figure out why. So, "Dear Ace, my name is Michelle. I went on the first or second Grin Kids trip to Disney World. About 6 weeks ago, I was feeling depressed. And then I found your Ace at Large podcast. When I heard your daughter died in a car crash, I felt so bad for you. But then I thought, wait a minute. He is turning it into a positive. I have quadrispastic cerebral palsy and OCD and panic disorder. I'm in a wheelchair and moved into a group home 3 years ago. I'm about to be 28 years old. I told my parents I was tired of living with old people. I listened to your podcast," and she goes on to why she listened to my podcast, and I'll spare that information. But she said, "Thank you for doing this podcast. It cheers me up and makes me forget my problems. It makes life a little easier. Sincerely, Michelle." Well, that's why we're here. So I'm not going to say that everything's, always going to be fantastic, because let's face it, one of the reasons that we come here is that we're looking for something to help us get through. We're looking for something that inspires us. We're looking for something that makes us want to better our situation and find new ways to tackle our situation. And I got to be honest with you, I'm struggling with a few things lately that have led me here to this place, to the Meaningful Meeting. and have reminded me why doing this every week is important to me. And I hope it will be important to you as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about my struggle and how I hope what I am going through can help you, no matter what it is that you're going through. Next.
The one meeting you actually need each week. There's more of the Meaningful Meeting with Ace coming up.
So I'm going through a lot of things lately, and I don't want you to take this as being bad because it's not all bad. There are some incredible things that are happening in my life, but there is this one thing that is always around. And just the other day, my wife, Amanda, who is pregnant with our first child, we've been married a little over 2 years. And for those of you who don't know, if anybody just stumbled across this podcast and you don't know the backstory, I'm 54, she's 30. We've been married for a little over 2 years, just over 2 years. This was 2 years in January. This will be her first child. It will be my third. Little boy, his name is Dax, due June 17th. We're very excited about it. But Amanda noticed something recently, and she pointed out to me, she said, you seem to have been a little bit more emotional lately about Peyton. Is anything wrong? Is everything okay? And I had to stop and realize that that is true. Peyton is my daughter who died just over 2.5 years ago in a car crash, 3 weeks after she turned 21. This July, just a few weeks after my son is born, her stepbrother, or half-brother, she would be 24 years old. And so I have struggled as a person with a lot of things in my life lately. You know, if you've ever had a child, especially your first, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of additional stress in this scenario that I am in today because just things are very different than they were the first time that I had a child. But more than anything, I think I struggle with the loss of my daughter lately for two reasons. One, having a baby reminds me of what this life would be like if she were here. She loved the idea of me and Amanda having a child, as long as it wasn't a girl, because she wanted to be the only girl. And now that we know it's a boy, it's as if this all kind of worked out, as if it was meant to be. Except there's this one person who's not here. And in the past couple of years, so many things have happened, so many times that I thought, man, you know, that's who I needed right now. That's who I needed to cheer me up, to make me see the good in things, to keep me moving forward in life. And yet that person wasn't here. And now I know how excited she would be to share in this moment, how much she would enjoy things like planning for a baby shower, and how much she would enjoy setting up rooms and just being involved in all of these things. And it makes me miss her even more, if possible. And the second reason is her friends are growing up. They are stepping into new areas of life. And it forces you in some ways to think, what would her life be like today? You know, one of her very best friends just bought a house. She and her boyfriend bought a house. She sent me a picture, video the other day. Hey, I want you to take a tour of my house. And I smiled with pride. And I cried while I watched it because I was so happy for her friend. And yet it made me stop and wonder, where would she be and what would she be doing today? When she died, she was living in a studio uptown Charlotte, right around the corner from me and Amanda. It just so happens a studio that I own with a friend of mine. I've owned it forever. She was my tenant, so to speak. And paying her rent, and she had just gotten a job at Fahrenheit in uptown Charlotte as a hostess. And I could actually look out my living room window, so to speak. It was a wall of glass, and see where she worked at Fahrenheit. Because I lived at a building called Uptown 550 on the 16th floor, and I could look straight across and see it. I used to kid her, hey, when you go to work, tell me you're walking outside and wave to me. She's like, Dad, I'm not. I'll look, and I'll go out on my balcony and look, and I'll wave back to you. And she was like, Dad, I'm not doing that. I was only half kidding with her. But her friends' success, because they're all doing so great. They really are. They become these great women, and they're living these lives that are exciting, and they're experiencing these new things. And you can't help but wonder, man, what would this be like? A couple of them are hoping to get married sometime soon in the next couple of years. You just wonder these things. You wonder, like, she had just gone on a date with a guy, first date with a guy. And it went really well, she said. They had a great time. And a couple of days later, maybe it had been, it was less than a week, she died. And I've always wondered, like, did anybody let him know? Surely he figured out what happened. Surely she didn't just disappear in his world. They were, according to her, planning to go out again. So when I see all of this happiness, I get so happy for her friends. And it's a weird combination of, happy tears and sad tears. Because it does really make me miss her a lot lately. What would her days be like? What would she be? What would she be doing? And if you've experienced anything like this, you understand that that's a heavy burden. And it will never go away. 3 years later almost, never goes away. Never will. Just like if you are overcoming alcohol, drugs, never goes away. Never will. I have a friend who's an alcoholic. He hasn't had a drink in 30 years, if not more. But he says, I'm an alcoholic. That's why I don't drink. And he works through it every single day. Never goes away. A lot of these things will never go away. You get divorced, your life changes forever. It will never go away. You are changed forever as a person. That will never leave you. So what do we do? And that's the tough part, because you got to do something. You have to do something. Because you can't just curl up in a ball and die and give up. You've got to do something. Sometimes, a lot of times, at least for a few minutes, you got to just lean into it. You just take it for what it is. A moment that needs to be acknowledged. A moment that you need oftentimes to have a physical reaction to what it is you're feeling. Laugh, cry, shout, whatever. I'm a big proponent of finding a way to physically release this energy, to physically release this information that your body is processing, that your brain is processing. I think that's important. At least it is for me. Maybe you take a moment to yourself. Maybe you explain to someone what you're going through. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But sometimes you have to lean into it. Then you got to take that moment and just let it go. Easier said than done. But I think it's easier to let it go if at first you lean into it a little bit. And as I've talked about before on the old Ace at Large podcast, and I had to go back and look up the notes when I was thinking about this the other day because I just experienced this a couple of days ago. We were at the beach celebrating my brother-in-law's birthday. My wife is much younger than me, as I mentioned a minute ago. She's 30. And her brother turned 24 last week. And he's a great guy. Her family is so wonderful. And I love her brother-in-law. He's a fantastic person. Well, he's a few months older than Peyton. And so when they met for the first time, they became buddies, friends right away. Like he came up to go out on the boat with her and her friends, things they did independently of all of us. We would go places and do things as a group or meet up, and then they would stay and hang out or go do something, whatever, with his friends and all that kind of stuff. So I couldn't help but think, now 3 years later, almost 3 years later, what would that weekend have been like? Because, of course, she would have been there. How close would they have been? How tight would they have been? After having had an experience of traveling together to Jamaica for the wedding and all of these other things that they would have experienced now as friends, as family. And so that whole weekend, I just missed her so much. Because even though we were having a wonderful time celebrating, it reminded me, her birthday, not that far away. Man, how great it would have been to have had her there with us. Because I know it would have been fun and exciting. But the key is, don't let a bad moment make it a bad day. Look, and you're going to have more than one bad moment. And there's nothing that says a bad moment can't be a bad 30 minutes or a bad 15 minutes or a bad hour. I get it, man. I've been divorced. Say a relationship breaks up or you're going through a divorce. And sometimes, no matter the situation, no matter how it happened, no matter why it happened, sometimes you look back and you think like, God, it's just, how did that happen? How did it get so messed up? And it kind of overwhelms you for a minute. And you need to lean into it. And you need to acknowledge it. You need to physically express something. And then you let it go so that it doesn't become a bad day. So a bad moment, a bad 30 minutes, a bad hour doesn't ruin an entire day, because it's real easy for one day to become 2, and 2 days to become 3, and 3 to become a week, and a week to become a month. And no matter what, we don't want that to happen, especially if you've lost a loved one, because your loved one would never want that to happen. They would never want to feel that sense of responsibility for what it is that you're feeling and why your life got ruined, or your month was bad, or your 6 weeks were bad, or whatever the case may be. And if you're fighting alcohol and a bad moment becomes a bad day, and one drink becomes 2, and a drink today becomes a drink tomorrow, and a drink tomorrow becomes a drink every day for a week, for a month, for a year, that's the exact thing that we're trying to avoid. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty about having that bad moment. Don't feel guilty about taking a few minutes for yourself. Don't feel guilty about physically expressing these things. Now, as I've said many times with the meaningful meeting, look, I feel guilty for a lot of things in my life because as hard as I've tried to take care of people, a lot of family, a lot of friends, I always feel like I felt or have fallen just short in taking care of them. This is a shortcoming on my part because everybody will tell you that I put way too much pressure on myself, and I understand that, but I haven't overcome that yet. So I feel guilty when the other night I'm watching a show with Amanda. We were watching a movie, and there was a wedding scene. And this one gets me every time. There was a wedding scene. And the father sees the daughter in her wedding dress for the first time. And that crushes me every time. Every time. And I feel guilty when I start to cry. Like I'm not seeking this attention. I don't want you to think I can't handle this. Is how I feel to me. I don't want this to be a burden for her. It's my burden. It's mine. It always will be. And I know you're supposed to share these things with your significant other, share these things with your husband or your wife, and you are. But sometimes I just needed to be mine. But in that moment, it was obvious what was happening. And I always feel guilty. And I always say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that 3 years in, this is still really hard for me. Every time she says, please stop telling me you're sorry. It's tough, man. It's tough. So don't feel guilty. Be better than me. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't be sorry. Be better than me. Then exhale. That physicalness, just exhale and understand that moment's gone. Back to where we were. You're not going to take that misstep and have a drink. You're not going to take that misstep and go back to a bad relationship or throw yourself into another bad relationship or let this bring you down and dominate your entire world. You're not going to let this fear and you're not going to let this overwhelming grief ruin the rest of your life. Because the chances are it's not going away. You got to get it out of your system. You got to move forward. I'm talking specifically about what I'm going through with the loss of my daughter and just the pressure of the situation that I find myself of my life at the moment. But it works for everything. Drugs, alcohol, guilt, everything. But the key is we have to make a choice. And I mean we, me, you, everybody that's involved in any type of situation like this, we have to make the choice. It's up to us. Got to keep moving forward. Like my mom always said, one foot in front of the other. Eventually you'll get somewhere. You don't have to jump. You don't have to skip. You don't have to take big strides. As long as you're walking, you're moving forward. Choose is the key word. We got to choose to move forward. Acknowledge it. Lean into it. Physically release it. And then move forward. Now I'm going to have to go try to practice what I preach because I'm not always very good at doing that. I do want to tell you a story. In the final 5 minutes today, the story of a lady I met at the bank. I know. Who goes to the bank? Well, I had to go to the bank one day. And there was a little old lady in front of me. And I left the bank that day with regret for something I wish I had done. And I didn't because I was scared. And I hope that when you are confronted with a similar situation, you'll do better than I did. Next.
The one meeting you actually need each week. There's more of the Meaningful Meeting with Ace coming up.
The Johnson Group Facility Services is a commercial cleaning company that focuses more on customer satisfaction than the bottom line because each customer works directly with the owners every step of the way. If you need any commercial cleaning, the Johnson Group can handle it. Get details at acetj.com/clean.
If you want to sleep better and lose weight, then the product that you need is called Calitrin, or you can pronounce it Calitrin. Very easy for you to get. Just go to acetj.com/weight loss. acetj.com/weight loss for Calitrin.
You're gonna make it because being here means you are not alone. The Radio Button presents The Meaningful Meeting with Ace.
So I told you I had to go to the bank. I know, who goes to the bank? Old people go to the bank. Well, sometimes if you're doing business, you have to go to the bank. You have to go inside the bank for a variety of reasons. Sometimes you got to talk to somebody. So I went to the bank the other day, and I tell you this story because what I want you to do is do better than me. I left this scenario with regret. And I hate that. I just hate it. I hate that I wasn't better. So maybe this will help you in some way. I go to the bank, and I'm standing in line, and there's a little old lady, so to speak, clearly in her 70s, I would guess, in front of me. And at first I realized, wow, this is kind of taking a long time. And to be honest, I was annoyed. I was annoyed at how long it was taking to get through because I only had one quick thing to do. It was very simple what I had to get done, but I had to go in and see somebody to get it done. So there's little old ladies in front of me at the bank. And I realized she seems kind of frazzled. And the bank teller was doing a fantastic job of really spending time with her and talking to her and trying to direct her as to what needed to be done. And in the process, she told her to insert her card into the machine. And the lady kept swiping it. And I only noticed it because I heard her swipe it. And then she said, well, I need you to insert it. And she couldn't seem to grasp that concept. So I stepped forward and I said, oh, ma'am, hang on a second. Can I see your card? I think I can help you. And I put it in the machine. And it began to work. And the bank teller said, thank you. I was like, no problem at all. She just needs a little help. And the lady said to me, thank you very much. I appreciate it. She goes, I'm a little, I think maybe she used the word frazzled. I'm not sure. And she looked at the bank teller and she said, my daughter just died and I'm trying to take care of her business and I'm not sure what to do. And as she said that, I was beginning to step back. And it's just like, I got punched in the face. Like, golly, man. I know that feeling. And it doesn't matter if you're 70 or you were 50 when your daughter died. Damn it, man. That's not what's supposed to happen. And you could tell the lady was on the verge of crying. She was very frazzled and her eyes kind of welled up with tears. And I wanted to reach out to her in the middle of the bank and say, hey, I understand what you're feeling right now. My daughter passed away 2 years ago. It's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. And I didn't. I didn't because I didn't know if I could keep it together to do that. Because it instantly put me on the verge of tears. And I've regretted it. since I watched her walk out of that bank. Because how much would it have meant to that lady that day if I just put an arm around her and said, it's going to be okay. I know what you're feeling. I know what you're going through. I've been where you are at this moment. I'm there right now. It's going to be all right. Take your time. Nobody's rushing you. Please don't feel frazzled. Please don't feel rushed. It probably would have been a lot to that lady. And I didn't do it because I was not sure that I could keep it together for myself. And in reality, that's probably what she needed to see. Just real people, raw, honest emotion. And I've hated myself for that ever since. Like, God, why didn't I just reach out and help that lady? And I only share this with you because we talk about the fact that the reason we're here is to share our experiences with each other and help each other. And there I was having the golden opportunity to do just that. And I failed her. And I hate myself for that. It's an aggravation that I have. And I hope that if you have that opportunity, if you see that opportunity, I hope that you will not waste it like I did. Because remember, one day you will tell the story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. I really hope that somewhere, somehow, today, we've written a chapter in your survival guide. And I hope that next week we can write another one.
Now, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. You are a part of the Meaningful Meeting, presented by the Radio Network. Copyright ATJ Inc. 2022.